Okay. Well, as I said to these guys I'm about to introduce, I asked myself today, because most everybody knows that I sort of spend the day with the music and the people and the histories and the websites of the people that I'm going to interview. Today I opened up your portfolio, you guys, and asked myself, why me? you know, I'm the as we talk, I'm the classical guy. Most of my interest is in this classical music world as a conductor and so on and so forth. But I just want you to know that you're in good hands with me. I have survived this piece, and we're going to talk about it. I'm interviewing composer conductor Drew Zaremba. Hope I'm close there, and soloist Anjan Shah.
Right on.
Thank you.
Right on.
We've been struggling with names, and when I say soloist Anjan Shah, I mean we'll talk about the capabilities here, and we're talking about composer Zaremba's Rhapsody in Rag Joag. I hope I'm close. Help me.
Rag Jog.
Rag Joag.
Rag
Okay.
Jog.
Somehow I got an A in there. Rag, but the J is right. Okay, hang on, everybody, hold in there. You'll all want want to pronounce these words properly later when you find out how you can get the parts and play this piece, or try it. And those are going to be some of my questions. This is not fooling around. This piece. It's about a 21-minute. For lack of any other way to discuss it, as you've said, Anjan, it's a concerto. I guess we'd have to kind of, if you're going to put something. We're talking about cross relationships between hugely variant cultures is what is going to be the gist of this, not only the piece but of our conversation. So it's kind of interesting. You have to kind of put things in drawers based on whether you're Western culture or Eastern culture, So it gets a little complicated, but it's fascinating. And the piece is for bansuri flute, tenor sax, long pause, tabla, guitar, bass, and strings. And here are the people involved. I hope I can get close in terms of your associates, because the musicianship is just. You too, Drew as conductor, and Unjan as the kind of master soloist, the concerto soloist of this concerto, if you
Mm-hmm.
will,
Yeah.
are in good company. Nabin Shrestha on tabla. I know I'm butchering the name, but what incredible tabla playing. Jonathan Epley guitar, fabulous. All first-rate musicians. Who are most of these people in Chicago or what?
Jonathan, so Nabin is in Colorado, where Drew is, right inside of Denver.
Okay.
Jonathan is in Washington, D.C.
Guitar,
Amy Shook, who's the
bassist.
bass player, is also in Washington, D.C. And the orchestra are all Chicago string players.
Excellent.
Yeah, the
So,
entire recording was done in Chicago
okay, and
at
what
the
a studio.
Chicago
Give me
recording.
talk to me a
Yeah.
little bit about the studio, because the people, all of you that are gonna be looking at this video, and it's mesmerizing. Yeah,
Yeah,
to
so
watch.
the studio is the Chicago Recording Company, studio number 4. Um, After like 2 months after this recording, actually the company closed down,
Oh, that's
which is very sad.
yeah,
Yeah, the 2 months they closed down in July.
yeah. It's hard. It's
Uh,
been hard. And by the
it's
way,
it's
that's
very
COVID.
hard.
I'm sure
Yeah.
that's after effects of COVID when
Well,
business.
it's COVID. It's the industry the recording industry as a whole. Recording software becoming so much more accessible, equipment becoming accessible, home studios, being able to do things through the wire, the technology, and so yeah, it's unfortunate, but it was a beautiful experience. Drew and I had such a great time at that studio putting this entire project together.
Just a little. Drew, did I already give you some credits yet? Associate Professor of Music, School of Music, College of Performing and Visual Arts at the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley. Gorgeous, glorious.
Yeah.
By the way, one of my conducting teachers was in Colorado Springs. Lawrence Layton Smith was one of my conducting.
Oh, beautiful,
I've
beautiful.
been in
Yeah,
and out of Colorado, in other words, a few times, so I love it.
it's a great scene. It's a great scene. I've been there
coming up on 6 years. So
now
it's
here's why I said to myself this morning, why me? Because I'm just going to give a further credit. Drew is artistic director of the Veiled Jazz 2023 to the present, artistic director of Colorado Repertory Jazz Orchestra. And every time I'm reading these credits this morning, I'm thinking, am I capable of this? I mean, am I going to get through this? Am I going to be able to not babble in my drool? You know, I mean, we are talking very sophisticated and differences, but I think I'm okay on this one. Anyway, but just so everybody knows, I never know what I'm getting into sometimes. Sometimes I know what I'm chasing, and sometimes people just come into my life like you two did. Let's see, about Engine. Hang on, I got to go back. Engine.
There you go, Engine. There you go.
By the way, in case you were worried about your futures, you understand there is no editing. I'm a musician. I will not edit, period. I'm sorry. We go, we screw up, we make up, and then it's done. Let's see. And I think, Anjan, we did mention that your Bachelor of Arts degree, applied saxophone from Michigan State University. Did we do that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we haven't. So Michigan State, University of Illinois, Masters. I did an MBA at Loyola. And so, yeah.
Okay, thanks. And very, very busy, as anybody who's going to see this video. And by the way, the video of this piece will be up on the performingartsreview.net website. In other words, this is the first time I've ever had the opportunity to show the piece right there, you know, the whole thing exactly the way people, and I'm talking about music faculty and so on, are going to look at this, see it, to see how it works and so on. And then I hope I'll answer a lot of questions for some people. We talked earlier about what's improvisation, what's written, stuff like that. It fascinates me. Okay, I guess it's time. As I mentioned to you earlier, usually, you know, you kind of go through things a movement at a time or something. This is just a completely new experience for me in that it's a video of one piece, beautifully executed, beautifully recorded, and I just want to jump into it and ask the questions that come to me and came to me as I listened to it. And I want to ask you, ready? Here we go. So I even asked myself, is it even appropriate to ask how much is improv and what part what part of the improvisatory sections in this piece are written, or what part are chords? You know what I mean? Okay, Anjan, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Drew, do you want to?
Or Drew? Sure.
Drew,
yeah. Thank you.
So we want to speak generally to this. What's improv? What's written? Because you see it before your eyes, and I know from my ears that there's a lot of improv, and I presume there are some kind of structures. Go ahead. Sorry, Drew.
Not at all. There are a lot of structures. All of the string parts are completely written out. The melodies are written, of course, and a lot of the chords on the guitar are either specifically notated or just slash notation.
Gotcha.
But generally, as it exists in jazz and Hindustani music, we have an opening statement and then improvisation. And so the opening melodies are written, but embellished and enhanced by the performer. But then we have a long, extended solo section, first by the tenor sax, then by the guitar, and then by the tabla. And in the beginning, Anjan loosely wrote out his alap, his introduction of the melody and the raga. And then the tabla part, of course, within the framework, is completely improvised because within the Hindustani tradition. So a lot is written, but a lot is improvised too. And that's the beauty, because that's jazz, that's Hindustani music, and also it's the true, in my opinion, tradition of classical music. When you come to the cadenza, the improvised cadenza, Chopin was a great improviser, Mozart was a great improviser, and old string quartets were always composing their own works for each other and improvising things together. In the segmentation of the early 20th century, when people started becoming just performers, that's when I think we lost a lot of the great performance practices of the 18th and 19th century, not to mention the 17th century, of course, too, in the Baroque era of improvisation. Goodness, and Bach, goodness gracious, what an improviser. So, yes, lots of improvisation going on. All the string parts are written. Anjan is improvising a lot of great things, but lots of improvisation going on.
Anjan, anything to add to that?
No, I think, Drew captures it. I mean, and I think, that was one of the motivations behind the piece. I mean, the synthesis behind the piece was, I grew up in Detroit, first generation Indian. I was trying so hard to assimilate into Western culture that my dad, my dad constantly pushed me into Indian music, and I completely pushed back against it because I wanted to,
so classic.
Be American. And, after his passing, I, came to terms with, I need to figure out how to reconcile this. And, I was fortunate enough, I started talking to a network of friends and who introduced me to Drew. And, Drew had an incredible project that I had heard about, that he actually went to China and actually orchestrated for Western orchestra, Chinese opera, traditional Chinese opera. And so
that's crazy. Go ahead.
Yeah. Drew.
Yeah, that's so I lived I'm from California originally, from Orange County, but I lived in Belgium for 6 years throughout all of high school and middle school. Then I came to Texas, and
how unfortunate. Sorry, everybody in Texas.
Well, it was double culture shock. I'll just put it that way, because I wasn't just coming from Europe, but I was coming to Texas. So, and being learning about world music has been in my heart ever since moving to Belgium. And so I got to live in China and study Chinese opera and combine Chinese opera and jazz under the commission there. And I've always been combining. I grew up a classical pianist. I went all the way through the Grieg concerto when I decided to stop my studies, and then played jazz and Hammond organ. But I'm a saxophonist as well and a flutist, and then started really writing in college. And fusing music together has always been my passion. And so when Anjan approached me about this, it was well, once again, I don't know anything about this, but I'm going to dive in and learn as much as I can and have a great romping time.
I am comforted.
So,
by the way, Gunther
yeah,
Gunther Schuller has risen once again from the dead. As most of us know, this third way that Gunther Schuller was so involved in. I have seen it in the flesh now for 5 or 6 at least years. Young, fabulous, brilliant pianists, for example, who can, as you mentioned, who have now regained the art of improvisation. All of that is just so good, let alone, I've forgotten his name just now, a German pianist in Hamburg, fabulous classical pianist, and he has a band, and he improvises, and, all that. And I sound like an old man, and I am, in that my whole training was white tie, tailcoat, conservatory thing, straight up, straight down. Everybody else was the enemy when I was a kid. You'll be glad to hear that I have mellowed, in fact. So in other words, Gunther Schuller was way ahead of his time in that whole concept. This blending of cultures is essential to moving on into the age of Aquarius, if you'll allow me that soppy thought, where we will all finally know that we all have worth for each other and all the rest of it. So I've mentioned Gunther Schuller. I didn't want to forget mentioning him, because he has been proven over and over again to have had the right idea about these things. To Anjan Shah, a loaded question.
Hey, Dan, you're fading away. The microphone, you're fading away.
Okay, let me see what I can do.
Oh, that's better.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the microphone just got away from you.
Maybe, or it could be Skype, or they aren't altogether together. Can you hear me now? I'll speak a little more clearly now. Okay. Yep. Likewise. Okay, good. Here's my loaded question for you. I'm joking, of course, but this whole idea of what it's really rather dumb. I don't really know can give us your background. Where did you come from? What was your training outside from college? What is it that gave you this decision to meld your own culture with others? And so, you know what I'm trying to say, rather awkward.
Yeah. I mean, I think, growing up, first generation Indian, growing up in Detroit, played in, public school band, had a great experience there. ended up going to college to study music. You know, the entire time my dad comes from a long line of engineers, and he was pushing me towards engineering. But one of the reasons that he and my mom came over to this country was to be able to give their children the opportunity to pursue the type of life that they wanted to pursue. In India at the time that they were growing up, you were going to be either an engineer or a doctor or, some sort of an accountant, some sort of professional business operational capacity, right? The arts were, in India, at least in my parents' family, the arts were tolerated, but to think of it as a calling or a profession was kind of unheard of, at least in our family.
By the way, that's virtually universal.
Yeah.
I should have been a dentist.
Yeah.
Pay attention. Yeah. My dad wanted me desperately to be a dentist. And as we all know, capitalist societies, I'm looking for lightning strikes, have no interest in anything other than what makes money. So of course, the arts are just, frou-frou. What do you mean you're going to try and make a living in the arts? Are you out of your mind? Go into dentistry. Okay. So we all share
going through a regular academic or conservatory path, learning to play saxophone. I ended up, as hard as my dad pushed for me to be exposed to Indian music, I heard it growing up in the house all the time. I just never really paid enough attention to it. Just maturity. But, you go through, I was fortunate enough to get a gig with the Army Field Band right out of college, and I did that for several years. And then I had a saxophone quartet that was fortunate enough to kind of do like a Canadian brass version, but for saxophone quartet with symphony pops. Mm-hmm. And we did that for quite a few years. But then when I got married, my wife, the first year that we were married, I was gone about 200 days. And my wife said, you know what, if this is the way it's going to be, I want a divorce, after that first year. But she was, very supportive. She goes, I see how passionate you are about this, but, I really want to have a family. And I said, yeah, I agree with you. I want to have a family. So she actually paid for me to go back to get an MBA. And so I've been out in the corporate world. We got my daughter off to school. I'd been playing that whole time. I'm on the call list, the sub list, or the extra list with the Baltimore Symphony, the Annapolis Symphony, a bunch of orchestras here in the Washington, D.C. metro area whenever they do Bolero or Pictures at an Exhibition, or, comes up once every 5 seasons or so, right?
That's what I was going to say. That's slim pickings, anyway.
Yeah, right. Right. But the upshot was that it kind of kept me playing. I think, with my dad's passing, he passed just before the COVID shutdown. And with that, I think one of the catalyst events that really brought this back to the forefront, we finally had a temple service when they opened up all the restrictions around like church services and things like that. We were finally able to give my dad a temple service, and about 45 minutes of that temple service was this beautiful, very transcendent music, very Hindustani. And for a moment there, I felt my dad's presence. And immediately afterwards, I said, I need to learn how to do this. And so I jumped on Amazon as we're walking out of the temple, and I ordered a Bansuri flute. And when it came to my house, like the next day, I just jumped online, and there were so many YouTube videos on how to learn. So I did that for about a year. I did a couple of small little projects with that. And it occurred to me that, I need to figure out a way to bring that Indian culture and that Western upbringing conservatory, the jazz, all of that together. And, that was my big epiphany. It's like, this is how I kind of reconcile what my dad was trying to so hard to teach me when he was alive. And, I just feel all of that kind of came together. I met Drew, and everything just kind of fell into place very quickly. Granted, it's taken 2 years, but, these things take a little bit of time, a little bit of thought, quite a bit of thought, a lot of discussion. But, I think we're both really, really ecstatic about the outcome of this project. And, we want to get other orchestras really excited about it, especially orchestras that are trying to, you can walk the walk, talk the talk, or walk the walk, or do kind of both, that are really pushing to bring people together. I think in this political climate, it's been so divisive in this culture, in this society, that, the arts have such a way to bring people together. And I think this piece specifically brings about different cultures in a really compelling way. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that kind of gives you a very broad perspective.
It does, and I'm going to use the word woke. And I want to use it very specifically. The beauty is, forget what those other crazies are saying. To be woke is to understand finally how things connect, what the history is, everything. Excuse me, I'm reading all about North American Native Americans, and the horrors are appalling, and they were all just shoved under the rug, and now we're becoming woke to this. There's no other way to cure the psyche and the heart of a nation than to confront the issues. And in your case, and by the way, I just want to mention, I became woke. I don't want to overdo this. When I listened to the first move, and I want to talk about the intro, because of course that's obviously sitar, isn't it? Drew? That sitar
and tempura. And tempura.
Yes, thank you. Thanks also, because remember, I'm kind of, I'm a little bit afloat here, adrift here. But the point is that I got it right away, because my moment of wokeness was in about 7th grade. Remember, you're too young, all of you, but in the early 60s, Ravi Shankar was the biggest thing to ever hit long playing records, as far as I can remember. And even the classicist, I just was in love with all of those Ravi Shankar recordings. So at the opening, I saw that. You will be penalized, Drew, for drinking in front of me. Now I'm drooling. I've got to have my port. Where's my port? Anyway.
Nastrovia, my friend. Nastrovia.
That's, I hope, good luck, or either go to that or go to hell. But anyway.
Cheers in Polish.
But I wanted to let you know that about how music, I'm trying to get us serious now here for a minute, but something about how the simplest things can bring us back to huge memories and also deliver huge revelations. So this is what I was trying to say. Let me see here. Let me catch up on my notes. So it was that craze in the early 60s. It was my first experience, and somehow or other I just fell in love with it. Don't ask. I'm supposed to be, I was the conductor kid, the wunderkind, and all those Ravi Shankar records. I was just insane, and it's about the casting of spells, I think.
Yeah.
So bravo, Drew, for helping me instantly know where I was in that introduction.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. And I owe a lot. I just want to say real quick, I owe a lot to Anjan, because he not only believed in me, but gave me resources to study. I got together with a guru, with this incredible Bansuri player, where I got to learn from a Western and Eastern perspective what a raga is, what a tala is, what is authentic fusion, and then meeting with I owe a whole lot to our good friend on the tabla, so much, because he showed me all the tricks.
Oh, what a master too!
My goodness, I owe him so much. Nabin is just a treasure, and so I had time to, ultimate. Am I going to give? And when I did the Chinese opera, I was studying for several months, and I came to a critical juncture where I said, oh my gosh, I have to do something now. What am I going to do? This is not going to be authentic at all. And I realized it's not about being authentic to a Chinese person or even to a white person. It's about being authentic to myself and bringing my perspective as a Westerner approaching this music. So as long as I can be sincere in my approach, then I can be happy and be not proud, but grateful for the opportunity to create this music and perform it with such great voices as Anjan, Nabin, Jonathan, and the whole orchestra.
And the piece itself gives wonderful placement. The way you've designed it, the arc of the way you've composed the piece, so that everyone has an opportunity. Of course, I mean, I'm speaking givens, but they're beautifully placed and beautifully organized, and they make great sense to me. And we
Thank you.
discussed a little bit and answered already this idea of written work and improvisation around it. I mean, the answer is almost oxymoronic. Of course, that's what I heard. Of course, written and improvisation. What else? How else do you define this music, for example, let alone jazz, ragas and so on? How I was curious again from those, from your taking me back to seventh grade. What I do remember very much, and you straighten me out, please, about ragas. They're the pulse, the configuration. You know what I'm trying to say? It's all very strict and from 1800 years ago and stuff. You know what I mean? It's all that.
Yes.
And the formulas can't be tampered with, or can they? And so therefore I ask, how did you assimilate that strictness into a looser, jazzish kind of result?
Well, ultimately...
Both of you. Let's ask both, but go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, thank you. I love Brazilian music. There's a lot in common with jazz. We have a common European ancestry, and we have a common African rhythmic basis. Jazz being in the United States and Brazil being in South America. And I talk to my Brazilian colleagues, and I say, well, what is the authentic rhythm for this, and what is the other? And they say, well, I'll show you, but just so you know, this is fusion. You approach it how you approach it. You don't need to be authentic. The more authentic you approach it, the more genuine you will be in it. But you don't need to. It's not about being genuine, because you're not Brazilian. How could I be? And so with this, it's the same. It's I'm not trying to be Indian. I'm not. I'm from Southern California. But as a citizen
don't
of the
be too
world,
hard on yourself. It's okay.
Yeah. But it was about learning the rules and then saying, okay, these are the rules according to them. These are the rules according to jazz. Oh. These are the rules according to my classical piano upbringing. Okay, to hell with all of it. Let's go with where my heart takes me, based on some precepts that I have, which are, it's going to be tonal, it's going to be playable within a few rehearsals, and it's going to be palatable to an audience and to the musicians. For those, where the trifecta, of course, to me are the performers, the audience, and the composer. So we need a balance between these things, with the clear weight, of course, being on the audience. I don't want to lose the audience. I don't care what Milton Babbitt says. I do care who listens. And so I want to have a relationship with the audience. I perform and compose at the pleasure of the listener. And so I want to, with those three things guiding me, and then knowing, here are the rules of Hindustani music. Here's the form. Oh, I got to use the form. The form is what will guide my whole piece. And then from there, I can use this rag, which is drag jog, which is 1, 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1, with a flat 3, sometimes on the way down.
That was the gist of where I was going. What to hear, what to listen for in terms of that that structure.
And that's it. And that provides a lot of the vertical structures. It provides a lot of the root movement. Of course, it's the melody, but more than that, it's the blues, which is to me common across all cultures. The combination of major and minor, the combination of sad and happy, the dichotomy of being elated and yet being melancholy at the same time. And so that completely drew to me as a jazz musician, as a classical musician, and now with 2% of Hindustani musician in me. So, yeah.
Speak. How do you respond to that incredible lecture we just heard? How does it make sense, Anjan?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you talk about the authenticity, and I think Drew hit it kind of on the head. I mean, we're not trying to be classical Hindustani. We're not trying to be straight ahead jazz. We're not trying to be classical. I see this in the way that Drew captured this. This is such a reflection of my upbringing, the synthesis of cultures that I've had to, reconcile over time. And so there's an authenticity that comes from the individual, in this media rich age, people are looking for stories. Everything needs a story, and this, there's a genuine aspect to this, and Drew, I loved working with Drew on this project because on top of being such a wonderful talent and being able to absorb all of this information very quickly, synthesize it, and then turn something out, he's a saxophone player, and he knows how to write for the instrument, in a way that really captures its beauty. I think there's a lot of composers now that really do a fantastic job writing, but they're looking to capture the kind of the aspect, the acrobatic aspect of what the instrument can do. And, I think my personal opinion, sometimes you lose, there's such beauty in simplicity. And the way that this rag, it starts from the rag. And I think, the fact that, Drew, we started this project actually with another rag. And I think as Drew started to get into it, he said, let's look at rag jog. There's another rag called Hamsavani that we originally started with. And, as Drew and I were talking, and as he started to absorb this, he said, let's change gears and look at rag jog. And jog, because of, if you put rag jog in the blues scale on a Venn diagram, you'll see so many of the common notes, and it becomes such a great place to start blending, right? And so, we talk about blending from a tonal standpoint, but also blending from, my diversity blending, and so there's so many parallels there. So there's a real genuine component to this that kind of cuts across, the philosophical piece, but then, in the weeds, the piece itself. And
what's been on my mind through the past couple minutes of this conversation is, in my head, I had the word conflation, to conflate cultures into a new, third way or whatever you want to call it. But then Drew brought up fusion, and I haven't heard that word in a long time, and it works perfectly. So I mean, it's semantics. It's it's one and the same, really, fusion, conflation. But the gist of what the meanings of both of those needs to be understood, and is understood certainly from when listeners are listening. This fusion of cultures and styles and even composers, and that's why. Hang on, I'm going to switch over here to my question. I tell me if I am okay with what I'm trying to say here, to use as an example of this fusion or conflation of all this Western music, Indian music, and so on, because that whole opening, for example, pardon me, I got a little beast in here, is very Copland-esque. I mean, in a way, it's very Copland-esque, that string opening. It isn't, of course, but it just kind of, what I'm trying to say anyway. And also, I am really, don't ask me, I love history, but somehow I've really gotten into Native American history of the past 150 years or so. And all of that flute passage work could as easily be a Native American playing on the plains. Do you see what I mean? The similarity that we all have in common. Go, Drew.
I think what you're speaking to is just the universality of the open fifth.